What is up, you guys? Thank you for clicking on this video. I know I haven't posted in a while. If this is your first time coming across a video of mine, I talk a lot about deprogramming from 12-step, using cannabis after, I used to say cannabis in recovery, but these days I don't consider myself to be in recovery. I consider myself to have recovered from my IV heroin addiction. And now I am able to partake in cannabis recreationally and medicinally. And before, I used to really hide behind the whole like cannabis in recovery, it's cannabis in recovery. But while I do use it medicinally sometimes for anxiety, my stomach issues, headaches, period stuff, there are plenty of times, and most times, where I use it essentially because, as they say in the big book, alcoholics drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Well, I smoke some weed essentially because I like the effect produced by it, right? And for so long, I was afraid to say that. My hair is all crazy. I should have taken a minute to do something with myself, but I was like, I need to record something for YouTube because I haven't done it in so long, and I was like, I'm just gonna jump on right now and just record something real quick. So this is what we get. I do feel like there was a time where it really was like a cannabis and recovery thing, but it was a very short period. And then it just moved on to, yes, I use it medicinally sometimes and I use it recreationally a lot of times, but I still hid behind the whole like cannabis and recovery thing because I thought with a past like mine, I have to, say it's a recovery tool because we've been indoctrinated for so long to believe these specific things about somebody who's had a past substance use disorder, right? Like, we are programmed to believe that if a person is in recovery, they can never use substances at all, ever, of any sort, right? And obviously there's some different schools of thought. There's some people that don't consider things like Suboxone and methadone, tools of recovery. They still consider those active use. So of course they would definitely consider cannabis active use. There's people who, consider Matt and Suboxone to be recovery, but they don't consider cannabis. There are so many different opinions, but for the most part, people have a way of thinking about recovery that means abstinence. And abstinence does not equal recovery. And recovery does not equal abstinence, And I feel like for a lot of people who come from, the growing up with like the whole just say no to drugs and the dare and very just anti-drug, like the whole war on drugs, right? So we have been conditioned to believe that like all drugs are bad, and that especially if you've had a substance use disorder, there's no way in hell that you could ever safely use drugs or alcohol again. And perhaps that is true for some people. I'm sure there are some people in this world who have to stay away from all substances. But it's funny because in 12-step, I obviously get in a lot of fights with 12-steppers on TikTok. I'll have people comment things like, well, I'm a real alcoholic, so I can't ever use any, substances ever again. I'm a real addict, so I couldn't touch anything ever again. So you must have not been that bad. It's like, bro, I've had a few overdoses, 4. I went to prison. I lived in my car. Like, how bad does it have to be considered a real addict? And I think that whole real addict is just that's a whole other conversation, because that's a whole thing that gets people thinking that, oh, well, I'm not a real addict, so I can keep using. Like, why do people have to get to this super extreme point to be considered a real addict? But more than that is that I was a real addict too, and I still am safely able to use cannabis without it making me want to put a needle in my arm, right? But there are so many people who just, like, their belief system is that 12-step indoctrination, even if they don't work a 12-step program, right? There's a lot of people who their thoughts and beliefs about recovery come from 12-step dogma and they don't even know it, Like, I don't even work a 12-step program, I just know about recovery. And it's like, yeah, but those thoughts and beliefs are coming from 12-step, And it's been a really interesting journey sharing about this stuff, because now there are so many more people coming out and talking about how 12-step can be extremely harmful. And it's funny because well, it's not funny, but it really is. Like, there are two sides now, right? There are people who are the 12-steppers. And see, there are 12-steppers who absolutely believe in multiple pathways and are accepting and everything. I'm not saying all 12-steppers are a certain way. And that's another issue with the program, is that 12-step programs are on a super spectrum. I'm sure if you've been here before, you've heard me talk about that. How there are some meetings where it's just a bunch of people that they go, they read some of the literature in the beginning, but then it's, they're raising their hand and basically sharing burning desires and getting things off their chest, or sharing their highs and their lows, whatever. Those type of meetings are not the type of meetings that I went to. I went to like big book extremist meetings where if someone was to raise their hand and talk about their problem, they would get yelled at, right? Because we were there for the solution. We've all got problems. We're here to spread the solution, not the mess. Keep it all about the first 146 pages the first 164 pages of the big book. Makes it more difficult sometimes when I'm talking about 12-step programs, because there probably are some people that haven't seen what I'm talking about. If you go to a meeting that lets people on MAT treatment, and I've even heard of in California that there's meetings that let people use cannabis and collect chips and work the steps and all that stuff. If you go to those type of meetings, you're probably not going to really understand some of the stuff that I talk about. Because the truth of the matter is that most meetings aren't. I think we're starting to see, I hope, more meetings that are more accepting, because there's more and more data and research that shows us that harm reduction is the way that makes sense. Because at the end of the day, you can't force somebody into recovery, right? So recovery is not even everybody's goal. 100% abstinence is sure as hell not my goal, and that's okay. But for so long I thought it wasn't okay, and I had to sugarcoat it, and I've kind of been like struggling with talking about this stuff lately because so many more people are talking about it. So it's like, now there's so many things that I want to respond to, and then I get like overwhelmed, and then I don't say anything. But there's so many good, like great conversations happening around this. But I know for 12-steppers, it seems like there's a giant attack on 12-step recovery. But legally, there's right now a giant attack going on against harm reduction, with the stuff that's going on in Philly. And just like, honestly, there's so much going on. And I recently started a new job, so I have been adjusting to this new schedule, because I am at work at 6:30 in the morning, and I work 11-hour days, but I only work the 11-hour days 3 days a week, and then I work a 5-hour day on Saturday. So like trying to adjust to the schedule, it's just, it's been a little bit of a struggle. So I am out of the loop with some of the most current events regarding harm reduction, but I know that harm reduction is under attack right now. And coming from a very liberal state, Massachusetts, where we are very lucky to have the amount of programs that we have and the amount of resources that we have. I remember the first time that I tried getting into detox when I was in Texas, I could not believe that the hospital was asking me for $5,000 up front, when I was so used to being in Massachusetts and just being able to walk into any detox and just go and not have to pay a dime at that time, because the type of insurance that I had. Now I don't have any insurance because I can't afford insurance, but when I was using, I could have free insurance and just go to as many detoxes and, state-funded treatments as I needed to, because my parents had stopped paying for my treatment after a while. And, treatment, that's a whole nother thing, how repeatedly I'm going to all these different places over all these years, and I'm given the same exact treatment plan every single time, go to meetings, work the steps. It's something like 93% of treatments offer a 12-step based program. And when you know that everything runs on money, you can't help but think of how it's set up that way. They know the program doesn't work for most people. They know a one-size-fits-all model is absolute insanity. What sort of anything is a one-size-fits-all? There's nothing that works for absolutely every person that has anything, So it's just crazy to think that they're just forcing this one way for everyone. thing, like still in 2024. So it's just wild. But anyways, I know I'm kind of just all over the place, but I just was like, I have to get something up, because I know once I get something up, it's going to get me motivated. I'm like, okay, I have to make something better than that. And so then I'll try to like make something better. And then I know it'll just get me back into posting again. And where, who knows what's going to happen with TikTok. I think it just makes more sense to start posting more on YouTube. And like, you can talk, not that you can't talk long on TikTok now, because you can talk for 10 minutes, but I just feel like YouTube has always been what I wanted to do, but I just always get sidetracked with all these other things. So I think YouTube, with the amount of stuff that I see regarding recovery on YouTube, we definitely need a lot more about all pathways and more harm reduction education. Another thing that I really, really want to get into is talking more about prison stuff, because, you know, mad love to the prison community on social media, but I feel like, and not all, but unfortunately, majority of prison creators, I feel, really kind of feed into the stigma sometimes, you know, because prison stories are fun. And, you know, rather than, I feel like we should be giving more hope and more resources for, you know, people when they're getting out, and like, how did, you know, you find success? And maybe it's, you know, different for people who found success on social media, because obviously that's a different route than someone who, you know, had to get a job, you know, out in the workforce and have to have someone else hire us, versus people who are working for themselves. Like, I would love to do that. I've been trying to do that for years now, but I'm not successful at it at all, you know? So not everyone can do it. I mean, let's just be real. Not anyone, and okay, technically anyone could make a career on social media. Like, anyone could, but not everyone has the ability to do so, right? Like, with my mental health and my ADHD, like, I just can't stay consistent as hard as I try, you know? And I did just start a new system with like working through Google Calendar, alarms on my phone, and paper planner. I mean, I like set it up. I haven't officially started using it yet, but I am going to. Like, starting tomorrow, no, not on a Saturday. That wouldn't make sense. But on a Sunday. I'll start on a Sunday, because I am off on Sunday. I work half a day Saturday, but Sunday I'm off. I do work Monday, and then I'm off Tuesday. Then I work Wednesday, Thursday, and then I'm off Friday. So the Mondays and the Fridays, I really want to try to dedicate to, you know, getting more of my harm reduction outreach stuff scheduled, because I started to do this thing with restaurants, right? I'm getting on a whole tangent, but not tangent, but this is what I have to remember. I'm not on TikTok right now. I'm on YouTube, so I'm allowed to talk a lot. Like, sometimes I feel like I'm babbling too much on TikTok, but YouTube, I never have to feel that way, right? Okay, so let me back up to like the harm reduction advocacy stuff that I started doing. I haven't been doing it the past couple months. Honestly, this is embarrassing to say, but I reached out to a few different places, because what I like, so there's a couple different things that I'm doing, but basically what I like to do is set up a table and provide free Narcan and fentanyl test strips and education and, you know, handouts and talk about different paths, you know, just that type of vibe. And I like doing it like dispensaries. I want to start doing it at liquor stores, restaurants, and I want to do a specific restaurant specific training, like in my county and like probably like the counties next to me that are close, with overdose prevention training, because obviously for the patrons, you know, people sniff coke at the bar all the time, and there's fentanyl in like 15% of my state's coke supply right now, and that's pretty fucking high if you think about it. 15% of people who aren't expecting to be sniffing fentanyl, right? Like, it's a different thing when you're not expecting it. You're expecting coke, right? So and restaurant workers I can't talk. Hospitality has the third highest overdose rate. And I was just working at a restaurant for the past like 5 years. So I really want to like get that shit like scheduled more and like get on a regular basis. But sometimes you reach out to places and they don't respond. And like for me, that is the biggest, and I know this sounds like I sound like such a wimp, you know, but to me it's like such like like I get defeated, you know, especially when it happens like several times. Then I get just, and that's kind of what happened this, you know, the past couple months, and I haven't got anything scheduled. And then I really, really wanted to hand out Narcan. The 13th Step podcast, if you guys haven't watched it and listened to it, I mean, you need to listen to it. But they were having an event in Boston on the 25th, and I reached out like several times to see if I could table, you know, hand out Narcan and fentanyl test strips, and also like a list of 12-step alternatives, because obviously that podcast is about, you know, some of the horrors that happen in 12-step and what 12-step communities can breed. And they, like, the woman who did the podcast, she was like totally into it, but it's someone above her who's putting on the event. And I reached out to them a couple times, and, you know, I didn't get anything back. And then I had let her know that I reached out to them, and she's like, the next time I see him, you know, I'll let them know. And then, you know, I never heard from her. And I just, you know, at what point do you stop reaching out? And I know people say like, you know, keep going and stuff, but that's like not me. And I need to find a way to figure this stuff the fuck out, you know, because for me, like with my harm reduction, like my focus is like where I live and like where I grew up, like in the suburbs, and these type of moms, like my mom, like that kind of like, not my kid, like my kid would never do drugs, you know. And the people, like there's so many recreational users, and so much of harm reduction I feel like is focused on, you know, people that are at the extreme end of substance use, and just, you know, the extreme end of substance use disorder, which is great because we need a lot of resources there. But we also need some resources for the people that aren't at that end of the spectrum, right? Because there are plenty of people who aren't, and we still want them to be safe. Because the fact of the matter is, people use drugs, and not everybody who uses drugs develops a substance use disorder, you know? So it's just, I don't know. But anyways, that's what's going on with me. I'm trying to just get myself into this groove, and I mean, I don't know, I feel like I'm always trying to get myself into the groove. But so anyways, that's all that. Well, I guess I'll wrap this up, and then I will be back soon. I'm gonna be back every week. Like, this is my commitment. Today, I'm looking at you guys, but I'm looking at myself right now in this camera, and I'm telling myself, you have wanted to do YouTube and make YouTube videos for a very long time. What is stopping you? Just stop and just show up and do it. I have 2 days off a week. There is no reason why you can't record one day and edit another day, and neither one will take up all of your day off. There's no fucking reason. So let's go, bitch. And to you guys that actually watch, I really do appreciate you, because, you know, it gives me, it's like, okay, it's not for nothing. Even if I only get a few views and like a couple comments, it's enough to get me back. You know, it's enough to be, okay, someone's watching it and someone gives a shit. All right, guys, have a good day.